my presentation is called Scuttled, Life on the Rochdale Canal, and scuttled has a double meaning. Of course it does. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the Rochdale Canal. We're going to have a quick map regression. Talk about the archaeological evaluation, the mitigation, and the creative project that the works inspired. So the Rochdale Canal is from Manchester to Sowerley Bridge. It's the first Transpennine canal. It was only approved on its third application, and probably because it went over the Pennines. So it was really expensive, and £600,000. And it was finished in about 1804 when the Rochdale branch opened. I put a sign where Rochdale is, just in case you're wondering. So the works happened at the very end of this branch here at the Rochdale Basin. So this is where we're excavating. I'm a commercial archaeologist, so we only dig when people want to build houses. So as you can see, this blank space here is quite a rubbish car park just before we went in, which I was delighted at because as an archaeologist, we know that all the best archaeology are under quite rubbish car parks. Prior to going on site, there was a desk-based assessment where we looked at the maps to see what we were going to find. This is a pre-1822 map, and you can see there's just one arm of the Rochdale Canal. So at this point, there's one canal warehouse there, and the wharfs are labelled on things that you don't really want to get wet, actually. So there's slate wharf, timber wharf, and brick wharf, I believe. A later map, 1851, you can see at this point there's two arms to it, and the canal warehouses. There's more, and different types of warehouses. So prior to us doing the work, the county archaeologist had a checklist of things that eventually we would be looking for. And one of them was look for boats, but you won't find any. So I thought, oh, bugger. So I got obsessed with canal warehouses. So there's different types here. So I thought that is exciting, actually. We have a type 1 warehouse there. And that's, we knew that a type 1, that's Mike Novell's typology, is where you've got the boat holes, and we have type 2s and 3s, and they're distinguished whether they go straight onto the canal wharf or they're slightly set back. There's some further development in this map. You can actually see the boat holes of the middle warehouse, and over here, massive structure there. We've got some structures that are actually in the canal basin, and we thought, well, they're probably stanchions, and it's probably a pent roof, and you could probably sail a little canal boat through there. Yep, cool. So this is an aerial view in 1923. So the Rochdale Canal Basin was actually sort of abandoned in 1921 when the Rochdale Canal Company, the largest fleet, disbanded and sold all their boats. This is a few years later, so the reservoirs stopped their water into the canal, and at this point it has been abandoned, but very excitedly, there's some abandoned vessels, and that's your Type 1 warehouse, which is in a bit of a sorry state at that point. Later on, so the Rochdale Canal Basin, it didn't have any water in. The vessels we know from sources were left there. It all went into disarray, and then it was backfilled in the 60s. So everything remained looking really derelict and awful. And then before the 80s, suddenly a load of warehouses were built, and later a cinema, Big Home Bargains, I think, or Home Base, I'm not sure. So when they backfilled it, they trashed all the warehouses and just threw them in the middle of the canal basin, and then put some concrete over the top. And by the time we were on site, you can kind of see it kind of sinking because it wasn't very good. This looks like a bomb's gone off in Rochdale. It hadn't, luckily. And this is just before we got onto site. So this is 2020. Just before we went on site, and those kind of the home base is gone at this point. It's just a car park with some trees, and just to orientate yourself, there's a Matalan over here. So first off, we wanted, so we knew it was there, but we didn't know what kind of sorry state it was in. So we put in 13 trenches, agreed with the county archaeologist, and we targeted the wharf walls, see if any of them were still upstanding or whether they'd been truncated out. We were also targeting, obviously, the warehouses, the the boat holes, to give us a good idea of what the preservation is, what kind of state it was in, and whether there would be any mitigation. You've noticed that actually only one of the trenches goes kind of into the basin. We couldn't put a trench directly into the basin because we knew underneath it would be really, really unstable and awful, which it was as it happened. So the trenches, when we put in the trenches, we found that these trenches up at the north, that large home base had totally truncated everything with concrete posts and foundations. So almost everything had completely gone, apart from some kind of vinyl floor on a 1950s building. So we just pretended that didn't exist. But here we found good preservation of the wharf walls. We didn't find the boat holes because our trench ended up here somewhere. Around this area was pretty good preservation. Over here, gorgeous York stone sets, and we didn't really find out what this was here at this point. So here you can see part of the wharf wall, the lovely large sandstone blocks, some sets, inverted brick arches. That's in the canal warehouse, the central canal warehouse, the foundations, because it was actually in sand at that point. And some really bad wharf walls that have been kind of repaired and looked a bit rubbish. So we did the archaeological evaluation, and we've got Goat's insurance map, and we decided with the county archaeologists to have a plan of action for mitigation. So the Goat insurance map, which we love, obviously, tells us more what everything is, and it tells you what the structures are. So yeah, we know this is a pent roof, it tells us that. This is the large cotton warehouse. Also, the structures up here, there's a blacksmith, there's a dry dock down at the south, and we can see more of what was happening in the 19th century up until 1921. This is the central warehouse, and you can see that all kind of things that it was storing were things that you don't want to get wet, like your cotton and your produce. And this is the cotton warehouse to the south. And this is a picture of the eastern elevation of the central warehouse. And I'd like you to just memorize that cart, if you would. I'm sure it's the same one. So this is the mitigation plan. So in red is the areas where we decided we knew there was good preservation, so that was going to be stripped. The green areas is where we weren't really interested, not good preservation or not an area of interest. And then the yellow was to be a watching brief where the land was being turned over to look for boats. And spoilers, there are boats. But because we couldn't strip it because of the land is also underneath that area was really disgusting. So reports with this hydrocarbons and asbestos and mercury and really terrifying things. So we bought lots of paper suits, which were kind of useless, incidentally. So we stripped the southern warehouse. So this is a drone picture. So you can see that's a really big digger, not a small digger, big digger. So you can see how big it is. So this is all York stone slabs. This is obviously a schematic picture that we did afterwards of a plan. I'm going to show you lots of pictures of this because my supervisor, I think he thought it was a nightmare. So he told me to go and brush it for a week. So it's really clean. So I'd like you all to admire it. Again, thank you. A week. Thank you very much. And there's one of the stanchions. You know, the ones with the pent roof at the south. There he is. And here he is on the plan. And there's just under 7 meters between the wharf and the stanchion. It's the only one we found. And then I found a picture in a book that was kind of crumpled, which is why it's a bit rubbish. And you can see that there's the pent roof. There's one of our stanchions that are actually in the basin. And these are boats. And they're wooden and they're flat. And the cranes on the Rochdale incidentally are all wood, as opposed to Bridgewater metal. So the central area of the boat holes, we stripped that as well. And as you can see, I think you can see that. You can see the boat holes going in. So this area here is the basin. So we couldn't put any diggers on that. And we also couldn't, as I said, we couldn't strip it. It had to be turned over afterwards. But we were there looking for boats. And where do you put your boats? Where do you put them to bed when you've abandoned them? You put them in boat holes. Oh, I cleaned that as well. So, it was all excavated with big diggers. So we started to look for the boat. So we had to dig it from what was the east, and the digger driver was a bit blind. Well, he wasn't blind. He was digging blind. So it's. Do you know what? I'll just stop there. He wasn't actually blind. So here's a boat. So boat A. I don't know why I called them boat A and B, not 1 and 2. But anyway, so here's boat A. So in one of the boat holes. So 72 foot long and 14 foot wide. And I did say good preservation until John did his presentation, and that they were in good preservation. So I'm going to take that back and just go, they existed in part. So this part, we didn't know whether it was the stern or the bow. Remember, we couldn't dig from the other side and we couldn't dig underneath because they'd just fall, and we couldn't put a digger on that side. So we didn't know, we could realise it was double-ended. So we did have a kind of a diagnostic end, and we could sort of see the imprint on the other side. The middle bit was completely fragmented, but obviously it was Carvel built. It was kind of flat, but with a gentle slope. We did send some of the wood just to check what it was, and then it was the ribs were oak. It's pitch pine on the inside. So we got a rudder. And we realised that that end is actually the stern, and you can see the bilge there as well. Cool. So the boats were photogrammetried. This is just like an ortho picture from the top, so you can see it more. And that's where our feet went through, because it really was fragmented and the wood was so delicate, and that's 2 footprints there. Boat B was the same. It was a lot dirtier, it was a lot oilier, but it became obvious it was the same vintage as boat A. There was almost no difference, apart from it has a dead wood there, and the bill just kind of weirdly collapsed. So these boats, we didn't have the full draft. It was obviously been kind of, when the back filled, been kind of scalped, obviously to flatten, to make the really rubbish car park. But we had some paint. We could diagnostically say what they were, and it became obvious they were a northwestern type boat, rounded at both ends, and it's I'm going to say a Mersey flat type. There is an example of a Mersey flat in the Aylesmere Boat Museum, the Mossdale, and these boats were dumb flats, so they were never adapted for engines or anything like that. They were pulled by horses, and the Rochdale Canal, likely because it was the Transpennine Canal, and there's a lot of locks at the summit, it would be a lot cheaper to move the boats by horse than by steam. So, so as you can see, it's pretty much the same boat in the same boat hole. And because I'm romantic, I like to think there were sister boats. And I told the county archaeologist I would definitely find the name of them. And of course, you must never make promises that you can't keep. We didn't find any nameplates on any of the boats. As I said, the boats were left open for about 40 years. And those bits were glaringly obvious by their omission, really. And things like windlasses or anything, the hatchboards, we didn't find any hatchboards or anything like that. And possibly these are movable items like fenders. They all had strakes on, but possibly they've been taken as tokens, mementos, or reused. We did have paint. So red paint, so red was part of the livery of the Rochdale Canal Company, but we know from documentary sources that these particular boats were Rochdale Canal Company boats. So I also said I'd tell him how old they were, but that was a promise I could keep, thank God. So the boats were, the Rochdale Canal Company bought a fleet in 1888, and they bought their dumb flats there, and then they were, at that point, they were possibly 20 to 30 years old. So they're possibly between 50 and 100 years at the deposition when they were abandoned, and likely more pushing towards 100. Boat C. So this is part of the watching brief. So every other day I would go to Rochdale, and as they turned the land over, if there was any wood, we would stop and see if there was a boat. It was every other day because they promised me, and they kept their word, that they had to move quite fast, and also I was expensive apparently. Not reflected anywhere else. But anyway, no, I didn't say that, sorry. And one day on the 22nd of December, I don't know if they were excited, but I was. We found a bloody boat, sent me a picture, and there's a bit of wood sticking out with a bit of steel stuck to it. And they said, you've got to come tomorrow because it's nearly Christmas, and we need to get this, boat looked at. I was really excited. It's basically Christmas had come early. because it was a different type of boat. It was a composite boat. Except it wasn't really. It was very much different. It was, the sides were at right angles. It lacked the beauty of the other boats. It just felt different. And initially, when I was studying it, I thought that maybe it'd been chopped at either side because it was only 10 meters across, but it was the same width. That's weird. In the middle of it, it had handmade bricks with like Portland type cement as like a ballast over the top. But it was just weird. And there's where it is. So as you can see, it's actually in the basin. So the weather in Rochdale, unsurprisingly, is quite bad. So it was raining, the conditions were really bad. The driver of the machine was doing it blind again, terrible eyesight problem. And it was before Christmas. So nobody wanted to be there, or rather nobody wanted to be actually moving the diggers around. I couldn't understand the boat. So I managed to kind of 3D model it, but the weather was really bad and it really does affect the model when it's raining.
Yeah, it only looks good from that side. Don't turn it around.
Yeah, no. And can I just point out, there's only me with a shovel and an excavator, and I wasn't moving all those bricks. I'm sorry. So yeah, it looks kind of cool from there, but I realized, I thought, well, I'm never going to see it again. It's going to get trashed anyway. It's never going to sail again. So I bought the driver a bacon sandwich, which always works, incidentally, if you're ever on site. And I said, let's turn it over. And as I turned it over, I realised that it hadn't been chopped on either side. It was actually the full length of the vessel. It was very utilitarian. It's clearly not a boaty boat. It's more of a flat thing with a piece of plank where everything's stuck onto it. And as you can see, it's kind of flat transom there, and there was no kind of rudders or anything like that. So in the course of writing this report, I went to 3 different archives, one of which at the Canal and River Trust, where they're just amazing at Ellesmere Port. And they found some pictures, and it's a pontoon or a float. I'm going to use both terms because there was an argument. I don't want anyone to argue in this room. And these are both pontoons or floats on the Rochdale, but these are actually in Manchester city centre, on the other end of the canal. You can see that they're zooming round with rod, and here they're using it as more of a platform. So it was a utilitarian kind of, it probably zoomed around, it could have been stationary, but it wasn't for going over to Hebden Bridge. Boats D and E existed. They're entirely rubbish, but we have to include them because they'll feel left out. And basically they're at the north end where everything was truncated and there's just some planks, really. It was obvious they're the same type of boat. We zapped them in to see where they were, and you can see there they are, really. That's probably them. But there was no, like, stern posts were kind of in the mix of all the bricks. So they'd obviously, when they backfilled it, they just kind of swiped through them all. Boat F started off really good. I made a terrible mistake. So another phone call, you can see the metal straights kind of curling up there. So they have 3 of these on the flats, and obviously to get through ice or stop yourself banging into the sandstone wharf and damaging your boat. So I thought, oh, wonderful, this is the bow of the boat. I haven't seen the bow of the boat, I've only seen the stern. This is exciting. So I dug around, it was a really nice day. Took some photos, phoned my boss, can we have someone else out? It's a really good boat. And then it rained. And then it snowed. And then the boat looks like it's going to sail away, but no, it was kind of weirdly sinking, and there we are trying to dig it out. So the way I dug it meant the water got underneath and essentially all the ground around, so it couldn't be accessed at all. Massive health and safety nightmare, also very expensive. So there's me and John. You can't see our tears, but I had 2 holes in my wellies, and my wellies were full of oil. So yeah, I know, right? So I tried to 3D model it again, but at this point it started snowing again, and that's the result. But we could see diagnostically it was the same boat as A and B. It was kind of on a weird tilt, so the stern post was kind of, they'd obviously smashed into it and just laid it on top of the boat. So that was kind of cute. Again, no nameplates or anything like that. I went to, oh, this is a really good one because you can see them sticking out there. They're cute. Went 3 different archives, and I tried to get the names of the boats. The Rochdale Canal Company largely named the boats after flowers like rose, primrose, or foxglove. Here's a much better picture. And here you can see what with the hatch boards and everything not squashed in the ground. You can see the rope fenders there. So the fines lady in the office was pregnant, so I was under strict instructions not to bring anything back because it was all contaminated. So I did manage to smuggle this shoe. But the canal basin was open for such a long time that probably local industries just threw their stuff in there. Threw their stuff in there. And so there's loads of glasses, loads of stuff. We've got a stern post there. We've got if you remember, it's just a jigsaw now. As I was stood inside the boats, I realised I was going to be writing a report for quite a long time. But also I realised with the documentary research, it rains in Rochdale a lot, so I was able to go to the archives pretty much every afternoon when I was called off. And I realised that people worked and lived on these boats, families, and they were pulled by horses, and the families lived on these boats, taking cargo from Manchester up over the Pennines. And I realised I wanted to do something beyond the scope of the report and explore the narratives and lives of these people who worked in this very specific part of our industrial past, who it must have been like a way of life, like it was permanent, but of course it wasn't. It was a relatively short period of time. They were taking this cargo, and it was cut so short after the First World War. So by some mad serendipity, so this is examples of how well loved these boats were. By some mad serendipity, the company I work for, Mola, they were giving out grants for archaeology to be creatively interpreted in any form you want. So I applied one on them, got one, and we decided I wanted to make a Netflix series, a bit like maybe Downton Abbey, but not Downton Abbey, maybe more. Anyway, it wasn't quite enough money for that, but I thought an audio drama, let's bring the voices, or the imaginary voices of the past to life. So that's what we did. We've got this slide first, so I'll talk about that. This is just the census record that tells us who were working on the boats. So each boat was manned by a captain, a horse driver and a boy, but also the women and the children were always noted as passengers. This is because there was quite a lot of canal acts that stopped overpopulation of the barges. So we put out. We teamed up a partnership with a Northwest audio production company, and we put out an advert for 5 writers based in the north that shouldn't have portfolio, new writers. We wanted this project to go to as many people as possible and to give people as many opportunities as possible. We had 132 applicants from new writers in the north. Of those people, when ages were given, it went from 18 to 89. There was a complete split between sexes, good representation of LGBTQ, and every single one talked about how much canals meant to them and how much they wanted to kind of bring this part, or it was already an important part of their life. There's a lot of people who said they come from a working class background, which I think perhaps was the subject matter. So we had to choose 5, and we chose these 5, and we took them for a day into the Rochdale local studies to research and gave them free rein on what narratives they wanted to explore. So I'd love to talk about the writers, but I don't think I've got quite enough time, but you'd be able to look at it online. The audio drama at first was going to be 60 minutes, 10 minutes each, maybe vignettes. And then as they started submitting our drafts, we thought, well, come on, we must be even more ambitious. So we have 5 30-minute episodes starting from 1840, from possibly when these boats started on the Rochdale Canal, to 1921, when the boats were abandoned or scuttled. So we have this gorgeous narrative arc. So we created this fictional family of their generations, and they went through different. We gave a decade to each of the writers, whichever one they wanted. So there's a warehouse fire. Which is a real warehouse fire on our site. There's a murder. There's so many murders in Rochdale. I mean, not now, maybe now, I don't know. But then on the Rochdale Canal, so someone chose a murder. Obviously, somebody else wanted to explore kind of the domestic aspect of it, and also like life as a category of people who were possibly not very well respected. And also First World War, which was terrible on the canal companies because, you know, it wasn't a protected occupation, and these boats went into complete disrepair because there wasn't the materials or the expertise to upkeep them. So we did lots of different drafts with the script editor. Oh yeah, sorry, that was supposed to be more surprising. So as the script developed, we realised that to keep them all together, we had an overriding patriarch of the family who we meet when he's tied to the boat, which was what they did to the little children to keep them from falling in the cut. And then he narrates it all the way to the deposition. And there was only one voice I ever had in mind, and everyone said, no, you can't get him. And I said, yes, we can. I said, no, you can't. I said, yes, we can. So we did. And he said, yes, because, he's so fit. Sorry. Unsurprisingly, I wasn't allowed to meet him. My husband wouldn't allow it. But anyway, so we sent the script to his agent, and it turns out that Christopher, Doctor Who number 9, in case you wondered who he was, he's got barges on his mother's side. So he was like, yeah, totally want to be involved. So he narrated it. And we feel like we wanted to get, it's not just because I really think he's a wonderful actor. It's because we wanted something to really boost the projects. We knew that the other actors and the other part of the project would be people who could be boosted from the idea of a household name, and also everybody else. Cute. So other actors, Jenny Reid, if you read about it, she's a historical canal folk singer, and she does the theme music. It's incredible. She changed some of the words. The boats are Mersey Flats. And we went back to Rochdale and did a workshop with a school in Rochdale. We did a workshop about the boats with the VR, which kids will mention in a minute. And then we managed to choose, or they presented themselves as the actors, as the voices in the drama of the young people in the family. And we took them to a recording studio in Rochdale. They've never been in a recording studio before. They've never done this kind of thing. And they were all wonderful. And I think that was the best thing about this project, was going, hey guys, you know, this is part of your past, part of our industrial past, and come and sing the songs, come and play the parts. And this little boy here, he's not that little, he plays Christopher Eccleston as a boy, he plays his grandson, this is his wife, these are the really naughty runaway children. It's really brought it to life. And Kit. Oh, sorry.
Is that okay for me? Yeah, so my primary involvement with the project was entirely through the digital aspect. So I was on site doing the digital recording of the boats through photogrammetry, which, if you would like to see, there's still one more break. I'll be out in the foyer, which basically involves taking hundreds of photographs, putting them into a software, stitching them all together, and creating a fully watertight, so if you've seen the model, there's a big hole in it, mesh of thing in 3D space. And this is at 1:1 scale if you survey it with a GPS. And you can do really cool things with it, like virtual reality, which you can see here we did primarily to show the school kids who were involved with the Scuttled recording project, the boats as we excavated them. And the model that we see out in the VR that I brought today is just one of the boats, boat A, and it's just in isolation, but we built a fully rendered 3D environment of what the site we were excavating looked like. That's not actually what Rochdale looks like. That's just the best background I could find. But we have diggers moving around, sights and sounds of construction work going on, because a commercial archaeological site is not quiet. It's really loud. It's dirty. And it was also to kind of give you an idea of the scale of the boats as well, because you can't really get a grasp of just how long they are and how wide they are, particularly this type, without actually standing next to it and seeing it, basically. So this is the kind of thing we've been toying around with Mola a couple of times, more recently in the last year or so, to try and go to public outreach events like this and bring you to commercial sites, which it's not safe to do normally. And we do this via reconstructing what the site would have looked like, but as it was used back in the day, but then also like this, as you can see here in the screenshot, what it's actually like to be a commercial archaeologist.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, that's just at the end. So you can have a go in the next break if you would like to stand in a Mersey flat type boat. So the drama is 5 episodes, 30 minutes each, and it's free online forever. It will always be free, and please listen to it. Well, you've got a long drive home, some of you, so I don't know what else you're going to do. So we've got some flyers there, the QR code, or you can just Google audio boom Scuttled. Thank you very much.